a troublemaker. I've been a late night player. I've been broke as a joke. I've been a money maker. I've been a record breaker. Taking credit as an educator. I've been known to spit the flows and make it shaky thing. Popping, locking, stopping, let it hang. Watch us as we drop this hip hop. It's like a stain. We make a whole room drop and everybody sing. We want the funk. We gotta have that funk. We kick it old school. We think we're so cool. We take it back to the past. We gonna act a fool. Up jumps the middle finger. Make my Jaeger just.
Hello. Welcome to Sports Buzz, Fanatical View. I am your host, Scott D. Lewis, here live in studio, Comcast Cable, Channel 23, downtown Danbury, Connecticut, on this October 26th, almost Halloween. Next Tuesday, I believe, is the All Hallows Ween, whatever you want to call that. Bob is shouting something to me. I couldn't hear what he's. Oh, Bob's birthday is on Halloween. That's right. I totally forgot about that. And as you can maybe tell, my right-hand man, Mr. Bob Rao Jr., is not here on the other side of the camera. He's in the control room directing. There he is, a nice shot of him in this fall season, but we wish he was behind another camera tonight talking to me. But as the world turns and as the ever-revolving door in the chair, in the director's chair, spins, Bob ends up in the director's chair this evening as our man Mike Toohey bails on us once again. Unbelievable, this guy. What are we going to do with him? Anyways, but Bob's show Spotlight on Tuesday nights at 9, Wednesdays at 12. Mike's show Expose Cinema Friday nights at 9, Wednesdays at 1. We are live this evening, so the phone lines are open, 203-792-4101 if you want to call in. Maybe the Strange Man, Halloween is one of his favorite holidays, I know that much. Maybe he'll give us a call and I can chat with him since I can't chat with Bob. I did want to mention one final time as my show, Drive-By Shooter of the Cultural Alliance Western Connecticut Accessible Art Project 2017 lives to see another day. It was extended one final week by the kind folks at Hancock Hall. I thank them very much for requesting that I leave the show up an additional week to accommodate a special event they had there today, as a matter of fact. Which was part of a Cultural Alliance in Western Connecticut, was holding some event there at Hancock Hall today, and they wanted my artwork up at that for that event, and I was happy to oblige them, leave the show up an extra week. It's been a great experience, so I thank anybody who went down to see it. My sister was in town from out of town, and she went to see it. I don't know if anybody else I know went over there, who knows, but it was great feedback. And it was a great experience having the show go on over there. So I was happy about that. Bob did jump the gun on another picture, but I did want to put this one photo up before we get into baseball, which is where we'll start the show. Just want to look at that picture for a second. Just take a little look at that photo right there. I don't know, I see something going on in that picture that a lot of other people did not see going on when the game happened 2 weeks ago. Yeah, I can hear Bob yelling fumble. I don't know. We'll get into the NFL a little later in the show and we'll revisit this game and that photo, but I just want to take a little look at that picture. I don't know. Something seemed to be happening in that photo right there. All right, Major League Baseball World Series is on a break today, but that did not mean there was not news out of Major League Baseball and out of the Bronx. Whoa! Joe Girardi is out as the manager of the New York Yankees. I found this to be very surprising. There was hints of it throughout the postseason and after that game 2 in Cleveland when he made the fatal error of not going to the review. And then he got booed by the Bronx Bummers. Really, I was very surprised that Joe Girardi was booed in the pregame introductions of Game 3 at Yankee Stadium. In that series against the Indians in the divisional round. And there was all this talk that he might get fired, he might be out, he might walk away, his contract was expiring. I thought all this was just kind of talk show fodder. I had no real interest in the story at all because I did not think he would walk away, and I didn't think the Yankees would fire him. But depending on what you believe or what you see today, we'll have to look into it a little further. It was just out this afternoon. He resigns or was not offered a renewal of his contract. So does that mean he was fired? I'm not too sure, as we see CC walking off the mound in Game 7 of the Astros series right there. I mean, at the end of this last week, it looked like Yankee fans were buying their tickets for World Series. They were all up in their glory as they had rallied to win 3 straight at home against the Astros after dropping the first 2. And they didn't even think they were going to have to go back to Houston and play 2 more games down there. And the Astros certainly were tanking, and they were all done. And it was going to be history, Yankees, Dodgers, for old time's sake, in the World Series, the Fall Classic. It was going to be great. But whoa, what happened in Game 6 and what happened in Game 7? It was Verlander shutting them down in Game 6. And then our old friend Charlie Morton, Joe Barlow's own, straight from Reading, right around the corner from here. We've talked about him for many years when he pitched for the Pittsburgh Pirates. The last couple of years he was bounced around a little bit because of injury. He's traded to the Braves, I know. Didn't really do that well, but he ended up on the Astros, had a great season for them this year, and what did happen? He ended up in Game 7 against his childhood team, the New York Yankees, and he shut them out through 5 innings, and then another starter turn reliever shut them out for the final 4, and the Astros are the team that are in the World Series right now against the Dodgers, not the New York Yankees. So it was more like 2001 than 1996, as all the Yankee fans pumping their chest, pounding their chest, making all the noise, saying, oh, we're going back to the World Series. It's like 96, the new Core 4, the young guys getting it done. We got a dynasty on our hands, going back to the World Series. No, it was more like 2001 when they had a 3-2 lead against the Arizona Diamondbacks, and they forgot that they had to play Game 6 and Game 7 in Arizona, in the desert. And they lost those games, and they lost the World Series. This time it was the ALCS. So it's the Astros who now are tied 1 game apiece with the Dodgers after last night's 11-inning affair, winning 7-6 in a wild one. They were losing 3-1 in the 8th inning. They rallied against the vaunted Dodgers bullpen, who everybody said the Dodgers bullpen is the difference in this series, that they have a more solid bullpen than the Astros. They were down 3-1 in the 8th. They rallied for 1, and then they rallied for another to tie it in the 9th. They took a 5-3 lead in the 10th, and then the Astros bullpen, who people have question marks about, gave up 2 runs in the bottom of the 10th. And it was 5-5 going into the 11th, and another Connecticut kid right there. George Springer launches a 2-run homer in the top of the 11th for the 7-5 lead. The Astros hold on for a 7-6 11-inning win. George Springer from New Britain was former teammate of Matt Barnes, the Bethel kid, who now pitches for the Red Sox. They both went to UConn, and Springer launches the 2-run homer to launch the Astros into a win at Dodger Stadium out there. So they head to Houston for tomorrow, tied up 1-1. I think this is a bad blow for the Dodgers, if you ask me, because Verlander was losing after 8, 3-1, and we know what Verlander did against the Yankees. We know what Verlander has done. The Astros are 9-0 now in games that he has started since the trade. But he was losing 3-1, and that's a game with the bullpen that the Dodgers have that they got to win, because now they're going to get to see Verlander again, most likely. And, are they going to get to their bullpen with a lead against Verlander? I think in a series like this, losing a game to Verlander is a tough blow. Houston goes home for 3 straight now. We'll see what happens. It's Yu Darvish for the Dodgers. The other big trade that happened in the offseason, it was Darvish and Verlander, 2 of the top 3 pitchers. Sonny Gray, the other, who went to the Yankees, who were the guys where everybody was after. So now Darvish gets his chance to give the Dodgers the lead. The other thing is now the Dodgers are faced with the first stressful moments because they swept the Diamondbacks in the divisional round. They took care of the Cubs 4-1, and they were up 3-0 before losing a game against the Cubs. So they never really had any stressful moments against the Cubs. And, so here you go. This is their first real stressful moment in the playoffs so far. We'll see how they react to that. The Astros, we know, have been faced with adversity throughout. They were up 2-1 on the Red Sox, and the Red Sox won to make it 2-1, and then were leading in the 8th inning. So they were faced with adversity there before the Astros rallied to win that series 3-5, or 3 out of 5, 3 games to 1. And then, of course, with the Yankees winning the first 2, losing 3 straight, then coming home to win the final 2. So we know that they're game tested here, stress tested as well. That could help them. They dealt with the heat in LA. How about that? Crazy. Over 100 degrees in the first 2 games in Dodger Stadium. Did want to make mention of that. And the other thing I wanted to mention as well, in that Cubs series with the Dodgers, this is over 2 weeks ago now. Turner hit a walk-off home run against the Cubs, and I believe it was Game 2, and it was on the anniversary of the Kirk Gibson walk-off home run in the World Series. So that means the World Series used to take place in early October. Now we'll be lucky if it ends before Halloween. So the schedule has always changed. The seasons get longer and longer and longer. So I did want to make mention of that as well. I did want to mention in last night's game, again, Dave Roberts, I feel, fell prey to what is the thing that happens in baseball now. The quick hook. Rich Hill went 4 innings, and if you're a guy who maybe fell asleep during this and you're trying to figure out what happened overall in the game because it's on the East Coast, it's late, you look at the box score and you wonder, why did Rich Hill get the hook? He went 4 innings, giving up only 1 run. CC in Game 7 went 4 innings, giving up only 1 run. These managers have a quick hook. So back to the Yankees, though. It is a little interesting that Girardi's out. Personally, I have, I've been back and forth with him. I think can be a lot of things all at once. Overachiever and an underachiever, and also overrated and maybe underrated. He had the one World Series in 2009. The first year he came here after his run with the young Marlins team, the Yankees did not spend a lot of money. They decided to bring him in, and they were going to try to get some young pitchers. Remember Ian Kennedy and the like, Phil Hughes. They didn't go out and get the free agents. They wanted Girardi to manage them up. They didn't make the playoffs that year. And then they went and had the $450 million off-season spending spree, and A-Rod was clearly juiced in that World Series run, and he had his only postseason positive performance because he would have been tested positive if they were testing him for steroids in that as well. And they won in 2009, but since then, they lost a lot of early round games, early division rounds. They missed the playoffs in the final year of Mariano Rivera, Jeter. They went out in the 1-game playoff against Houston 2 years ago. He's had a lot of bad showings in the postseason. But then again, this year they overachieved in a sense. Young team. But at the same time, they still had the second highest, over $200 million payroll. Only the Dodgers spend more. They went out at the trade deadline, got a bunch of guys, and they really stocked this team. And they were right there, ready to go, up 3 games to 2, couldn't finish it off. Scored only 1 run in Game 6 and 7 combined. And he never did anything moving. Judge, who was setting records all throughout the season, he had the most consecutive games where he struck out in a game, 36, 37 games. He should have benched him sooner than that. He was having him at the, I never could figure out why he was batting second, a power hitter like him, who did hit for average early in the year, but then batted 180 through a large portion of the second half of the season. Why he was batting second, I could never figure that out. You didn't drop him in the postseason when he was setting records for most strikeouts in a postseason performance. So different things. I don't know. Maybe we'll have to get some of my Yankee fans to fill in for me. My friend Jimmy, who's called into the show a few times, didn't have a chance to reach out to him before the show to get him on the line. But I'd like to hear what some Yankee fans have to say about Girardi overall, his overall performance. I kind of thought he had a little bit of a weasel attitude in him. Sometimes I made fun of him at his press conferences from time to time, but he's out. You wonder where he's going to go. Maybe the Mets should have waited an extra week before announcing Mickey Callaway as their manager. They could have picked up Girardi. They probably could do well with him. Who knows who the Mets, but instead the Mets go with the young Mickey Callaway, pitching coach from the Cleveland Indians. Red Sox also announced Alex Cora, who's the bench coach right now in Houston, former player, won a World Series with the Red Sox in 2007. He's going to be the new manager. Maybe Girardi goes down the line to Washington and coaches up the Nats. Who knows where he goes? I'm sure there'll be a lot of people involved, interested in him. And who is going to be the manager for the Yankees? Donnie Baseball, perhaps? Who knows which way they go? It's going to be interesting. But I think the rest of the World Series is also going to be interesting. Tied 1-1, pressure on the Dodgers because now they're faced with adversity for the first time. The Astros, as I mentioned, have been tested throughout the postseason already. And they scored more runs than anybody in baseball throughout the season this year. A lot of people forget that as well. And they've got good pitching as well. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens as we go into the middle portion of the series here and see what happens. And also worth mentioning, that was the first ever win in a World Series game by the Houston Astros last night. They were swept in 2005 when they were a National League team by the Chicago White Sox when they lost that World Series only in 2005. Now they're an American League team, and they're looking to take out the Dodgers. So we'll see what happens there. All right, before we get back into the NFL, I did want to touch on a couple things. NHL and NBA are underway. The Rangers, and there we see the Bruins playing at Vegas last week. And they lost that game against their former goalie, Subban. PK Subban's brother. Off the top of my head, I can't think of his first name right now. But he is with the Vegas Knights, who have got off to a really great start. Of course, they dealt with the horrific events of the shooting in Vegas right before the season started. But they're settling in now, and they played pretty well, and they beat the Bruins in that game. So the Bruins are in 12th place overall, 3-3-1 outside the top three in their division. And the Rangers are 15th place overall in the Eastern Conference, outside of the top three, of course, in their division as well, at 2-6-2. They played 10 games. The Bruins have only played 3. The other locals, the Islanders are in 7th place out of the gate, 5-3-1. And the Devils are tied for 3rd place overall in the Eastern Conference at 6-2-0. It's been a little while since the Devils were actually any good. So maybe the Devils get back in the mix this year, and they're the team to pay attention to as far as the locals go. So I just wanted to mention that the Islanders beat the Rangers in overtime. Actually, it was a shootout in this game that we see right there. NBA, unbelievable is all you can say. Speaking of schedules, speaking of seasons starting, going longer, starting earlier, running later, feels like it was just yesterday that the NBA Finals just ended. They start the season 2 weeks early this year in the NBA to help out with some scheduled things, which I'll mention in a second. But here we see Gordon Hayward, a mere 5 minutes into his career with the Celtics after all the offseason moves. And can you say Joe Theismann? Unbelievable, the injury he suffered in this game against the Cavaliers on opening night. I will spare you the photos of the actual injury where his foot was turned in a direction you're not supposed to see a human being ever having their foot go. Complete break of his lower portion of his leg, dislocation of his ankle. Really just gruesome and horrific injury. Put a real dark cloud over things on opening night and the beginning of the season here for the Celtics. Amazingly, they somehow played a reasonable game that night and lost only by 3 points at the Cavs. And then they lost on the second night of back-to-backs. So here we go. Celtics and the NBA, and here we see some of the young guys against the Knicks in a blowout the other night, 110-89 against the Knicks. But so the NBA starts the season early because they want to eliminate some of these back-to-backs, 3 games in 4 nights scenarios that have been putting too much strain on their high-priced players in the NBA. They can't handle back-to-backs. And so what do the Celtics start the season by doing? Playing back-to-back and 3 games in 4 nights. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. It's unreal what happens in the sports world. Let's start the season 2 weeks earlier so we can alleviate the schedule. And so the Celtics go back-to-back 3 games in 4 nights to start the season. It's completely ridiculous. I don't know who these guys are trying to fool with any of this stuff they spit out of their mouth, but it's ridiculous. So anyways, it's going to be interesting what happens with the Celtics. There we see Kyrie Irving, the other guy who they traded for, of course, with the big blockbuster trade with IT, Isaiah Thomas going to the Cavs, and he's out for a while to start the season. But the young guys for the Celtics are going to have to come up with the goods. Jaylen Brown had a great night against the Knicks the other night, and Tatum really played well as well. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the Celtics going forward. But Hayward is out probably for the season, but there is an outside chance he would return in March, early April before the playoffs, which will be the best case scenario. Knicks, of course, 0-3. Celtics are 2-2. And the Knicks got a look down in Oklahoma City at their former player, Carmelo Anthony, who said this chapter is closed after saying that Phil Jackson stabbed him in the back. The Knicks are home against the Nets. Surprisingly, the Nets beat those Cleveland Cavaliers 112-107 last night. Break up the Nets at 3-2 early in the season. Knicks looking for the first win at home against the Nets tomorrow night. Celtics in a primetime event tonight play the Bucks for the second time. They played the Bucks on the second night of the season. They're playing the Bucks again tonight in a primetime televised affair. Schedule makers always making me scratch my head because I have no idea what they're doing. We haven't done much college football. Also, we got about maybe less than 10 minutes in the show, so I'm going to run through this real quick. There we see UConn, who's bounced back after the unbelievable 70-31 loss against Memphis. It was their 4th loss in a row. Since then, they've been in Temple 28-24 and Tulsa 20-14. 2 good games, back and forth. Some defense showed up. They're home this weekend against Missouri. So at least nice that they've come off the mat after those 4 straight losses in that unbelievable beatdown. They are 3-4 overall, 2-3, which puts them in 3rd place in the AAC. South Florida is ranked 17th nationally at 7-0, 4-0. UCF ranked 18th nationally, 6-0, 4-0. Bama is number 1. They're home against LSU this weekend. Penn State, after beating Michigan 42-13, knocking the Wolverines out of the top 25. They take on at Ohio State, number 6 in the country. Penn State's number 2. Big game this weekend. One of the big games of the season, really. Georgia is against Florida. Georgia's number 3. TCU, Wisconsin, Clemson, Miami, Notre Dame, and Oklahoma round out the top 10. So we'll see what goes on, but I did want to mention that we have not been doing much college football. All right, back to the NFL as we got, I'm sure, less than 10 minutes at this point. So yeah, there's that picture from a couple weeks ago. The biggest controversy of all. Only reason this was a controversy was because it was the Patriots and it was the Jets and the crybaby Jets thinking that this was not a fumble. Clearly, there's a fumble that takes place before the goal line, and then if you fumble the ball going out of the end zone, it's a touchback. It's been a rule that's been in place for the NFL for I have no idea how long, because I can't even remember how long it's been, because it's been going on forever. He fumbled the ball before he crossed the goal line, and they called it a touchdown on the field. He wasn't completely regaining control until he was out of bounds. That's fumbling the ball out of the back of the end zone. That's a touchback. And even if it was a touchdown, they were still losing in the game. It still doesn't take away the fact that they blew a 14-0 lead. The Patriots scored 24 straight points after going down 14-0 early, and they go on to win 24-17 at the Jets. And then the Jets blowing another 14-point lead this weekend at Miami, up 28-14 in the 4th quarter. They lose 31-28 against the Dolphins, who find themselves amazingly at 4-2, and the Dolphins play at the Ravens tonight. in Baltimore, a team at 3-4, which is really not playing well at all, and their quarterback went out, Jay Cutler, so it's the Matt Moore show. Wow, we're down to 3 minutes. I knew we were inside 10 minutes, but we're down to 3 minutes in the show as the lovely Candy comes in to help out with the show, as we are shorthanded, of course. So spare me your tears, Jet fans. Go out and take care of business. Too bad McFadden didn't show up. I would have given him a piece of my mind in that one. So the Falcons are at the Jets this weekend. Falcons struggling at 3-3, losing 23-7 against the Patriots, who are now 5-2. Patriots take on the Chargers this weekend, who have won 3 in a row. Big fog rolled in on that Sunday night affair against the Falcons in the rematch of the Super Bowl, and it was 23-7. Patriots getting it done. And big bad news, though, however, as they lose Dante Hightower, the captain of the defense. Patriots defense has played better in recent weeks. This is a big blow. In the AFC East, the Bills at 4-2, Dolphins 4-2. Bills home against the Raiders, who beat the KC Chiefs the other night. Raiders looking to salvage their season after losing 4 straight. They're 3-4. G-Men are on the bye, which is a good thing for them, as they are 1-6. Speaking of controversies, this should have been the controversy. The flea flicker fail Mary. I do have a couple pictures of this at the end, not great ones, highlighting it against the Seabags, but it reminded everybody, should have at least, of the fail Mary in the Scab ref game from a few years back. For some reason, this was no controversy. There's no way this is a touchdown. The defender for the Giants has the ball. Go to the next picture, Bob. You might see it. Who's got the ball? The defender. The receiver didn't come away with the ball. It's ridiculous. All right, we're about 1 minute down. I will mention in Bob's division, I guess we need to mention that the Eagles are 6-1, and perhaps they are legit and for real. Big game also in that division. Cowboys, Redskins 3-3. Vikings 5-2. Saints 4-2. Rams 5-2. Steelers 5-2. Titans, Jags atop the divisions at 4-3. KC 5-2. So some interesting teams to watch this year as the season moves to about the midway point. We're about 30 seconds out. So we will say goodbye. Thank you for tuning in. Again, we are off next week as there is some stuff happening at the studio. And then we hope to get back to a regular season to get things going as all the sports are in full gear. So when we get back, there'll be a World Series champion. We'll see who it is, and we'll see what's happening in the NFL and other things as well. So thanks for tuning in, and thanks for Candy for helping out. We'll see you in a couple weeks. Take care.